Book 11, Part 3 of Ovid's Metamorphoses. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by David Goldfarb. Metamorphoses by Publius Ovidius Naso. Translated by Brooks Moore. Book 11, Part 3. King Ceyx, disturbed by his loved brother's fate and prodigies which happened since that time, prepared to venture to the Clarian god that he might there consult the oracle so sanctified to the consolation of distress, for then the way to Delphi was unsafe because of Phorbas and his Phlegians. Before he went he told his faithful queen, his dear Halcyone. She felt at once terror creep through the marrow of her bones. Pallor of boxwood overspread her face, and her 2 cheeks were wet with gushing tears. 3 times she tried to speak, while tears and sobs delayed her voice, until at last she said, "What fault of mine, my dearest, has so changed your usual thoughts? Where is the care for me that always has stood first? Can you leave me for this long journey with no anxious fear, Halcyone, forsaken in these halls? Will this long journey be a pleasant change, because far from you I should be more dear? Perhaps you think you will go there by land, and I shall only grieve, and shall not fear the sea affrights me with its tragic face. Just lately I observed some broken planks upon our seashore, and I've read and read the names of seamen on their empty tombs. Oh, let no false assurance fill your mind because your father-in-law is Aeolus, who in a dungeon shuts the stormful winds and smooths at will the troubled ocean waves. Soon as the winds get freedom from his power, they take entire possession of the deep, and nothing is forbidden their attack, and all the rights of every land and sea are disregarded by them. They insult even the clouds of heaven, and their wild concussions urge the lightnings to strike fires. The more I know of them, for I knew them in my childhood, and I often saw them from my father's home, the more I fear. But, oh, dear husband, if this new resolve cannot be altered by my prayers and fears, and if you are determined, take me too. Some comfort may be gained, if in the storms we may be tossed together. I shall fear only the ills that really come to us. Together we can certainly endure discomforts till we gain that distant land." Such words and tears of the daughter of Aeolus gave Ceyx, famed son of the morning star, much thought and sorrow, for the flame of love burned in his heart as strongly as in hers. Reluctant to give up the voyage, even more to make Halcyone his partner on the dangerous sea, he answered her complaints in many ways to pacify her breast, but could not comfort her, until at last he said, "This separation from your love will be most sorrowful, and so I swear to you, as witnessed by the sacred fire of my star father, if the fates permit my safe return, I will come back to you before the moon has rounded twice her orb." These promises gave hope of his return. Without delay he ordered a ship should be drawn forth from the dock, launched in the sea, and properly supplied against the needs of travel. Seeing this, Halcyone, as if aware of future woe, shuddered, wept, and embraced him, and in extreme woe said with a sad voice, "Ah, farewell!" and then her nerveless body sank down to the ground. While Ceyx longed for some pretext to delay, the youthful oarsmen, chosen for their strength, in double rows began to draw the oars back towards their hardy breasts, cutting the waves with equal strokes. She raised her weeping eyes and saw her husband on the high curved stern. He by his waving hand made signs to her, and she returned his signals. Then the ship moved farther from the shore, until her eyes could not distinguish his loved countenance. Still, while she could, she followed with her gaze the fading hull, and when that too was lost far in the distance, she remained and gazed at the white topsails waving from the mast. But when she could no longer see the sails, with anxious heart she sought her lonely couch and laid herself upon it. Couch and room renewed her sorrow, and reminded her how much of life was absent on the sea. The ship had left the harbour, and the breeze shook the taut rigging. Now the captain bade the idle oars be drawn up to the sides. They ran the pointed sail-yards up the mast, and with a spread canvas caught the coming breeze. Perhaps the ship had not sailed half her course. On every side the land was out of sight, in fact, in a great distance, when, towards dark, the sea grew white with its increasing waves, while boisterous east winds blew with violence. Prompt in his duty, the captain warns the crew, "Lower the topsails, quick! Furl all the sails tight to the yards!" He ordered, but the storm bore all his words away, his voice could not be heard above the roaring of the sea. But of their own accord some sailors rushed to draw the oars in, others to secure the sides from danger, and some strove to pull the sails down from the wind. One pumps the waves up from the hold, and pours the rushing sea again into the sea, another takes the yards off. While such things are being done without command or order, the wild storm increases, and on every side fierce winds wage a destructive warfare which stirs up the furious waters to their utmost power. Even the captain, terrified, confessed he did not know the status of the ship, and could not order nor forbid the men, so great the storm, so far beyond his skill. Then he gave up control, while frightened men shouted above the rattled cordage shocks, and heavy waves were dashed against huge waves, and all the sky reverberated with terrific thunders. The deep sea upturned tremendous billows, which appeared to reach so near the heaven they touched the heavy clouds with foam of their tossed waters. At one time, while the great billows churned up yellow sand from off the bottom, the wild rolling waves were of that color; at another time they were more black than water of the Styx. Sometimes they levelled, white with lashing foam. The ship was tossed about in the wild storm; aloft, as if from a mountain peak, it seemed to look down on the valley and the depth of Acheron; and when sunk down in a trough of waves engulfing, it appeared to look up at the zenith from infernal seas. Often the waves fell on the sides with crash as terrible as when a flying stone or iron ram shatters a citadel. As lions, mustering up their strength anew, might hurl their breasts against the spears and outstretched arms of huntsmen, so the waves, upon the rising of the winds, rushed forth against the battered sides of the tossed ship, and rose much higher than the slanting masts. The ship bolts lost their grip; the loosened planks, despoiled of covering wax, gave open seams, through which streamed water of the fatal waves. Vast sheets of rain pour from dissolving clouds; so suddenly it seemed that all the heavens were flung into the deep, while swelling seas ascended to the emptied fields of heaven. The sails are drenched with rain, the salt sea waves are mingled with the waters of the skies. The firmament is black, without a star, and night is doubly dark with its own gloom and blackness of the storm. Quick lightning makes the black skies glitter, and the waves are fired with flames of thunderbolts. Now floods leap up into the very middle of the ship. Just as a soldier, more courageous than the rest of his brave fellows, after he has often charged against the embattled walls of a defended city, gains at length the place which he has fought for, all inflamed with his desire of glory, scales the wall and stands alone among 1,000 foes, so, when destructive waves have beat against the ship's high sides, the 10th wave, with known power, rushes more furious than the 9 before, nor ceases to attack the failing ship, until dashed high above the captured walls it surges in the hold. Part of the sea is still attempting to get in the ship, and part is in it. All are panic-stricken, like men within a doomed and shaken town, who see some foes attack the walls without, and others hold possession of the walls within the city. Every art has failed, their courage sinks. With every coming wave another death seems rushing in upon them. One sailor yields in tears, another falls down stupefied, another calls those blessed whom funeral rites await. Another prays, addressing trusted gods, lifting his hands up to that heaven unseen, as vainly he implores some aid divine; and one in fright recalls his brothers and his parent, while another names his children and his home. Each frightened sailor thinks of all he left. King Ceyx thinks only of Halcyone. No other name is on his lips but hers, and though he longs for her, yet he is glad that she is safe at home. Ah, how he tried to look back to the shore of his loved land, to turn his last gaze towards his wife and home, but he has lost direction. The tossed sea is raging in a hurricane so vast, and all the sky is hidden by the gloom of thickened storm clouds doubled in pitch black. The mast is shattered by the violence of drenching tempests, and the useless helm is broken. One undaunted giant wave stands over wreck and spoil, and looks down like a conqueror upon the other waves, then falls as heavily as if some god should hurl Mount Athos or Mount Pindus, torn from rock foundations, into that wide sea. So, with down-rushing weight and violence, it struck and plunged the ship to the lowest deeps. And as the ship sank, many of the crew sank overwhelmed in deep surrounding waves, never to rise from suffocating death; but some in desperation clung for life to broken timbers and escaped that fate. King Ceyx clung to a fragment of the wreck with that majestic hand which often before had proudly swayed the sceptre, and in